Okay, these are three very quick vids on the carbon cycle, and then we've got leaf structure, and then we've got breathing. So, carbon cycle, quick and simple. We've got CO2 in the air, in the atmosphere, and plants take in CO2 as part of photosynthesis. So, with that carbon dioxide and the energy from sunlight and water, plants are making glucose, and they can then convert that glucose into starch. They can convert it into proteins, into fats, into oils. So basically you've then got inside the plants, inside the grass there, inside the trees, you've got complex carbon compounds, carbohydrates, proteins and fats. And then we've got animals that come along that eat the plants, and then animals that come along like the cat here that eats those animals. And then the carbon compounds, the carbohydrates, the proteins and the fats that were inside the plants are then inside the animals. So when animals eat plants, they're taking the carbon from the plants. Now both the plants and the animals do this thing here that you should know all about, respiration. So that's where they release the energy from those complex carbon compounds, and in the process produce CO2, which then, as we can see, goes back into the atmosphere again. Now, what about dead stuff? Well, plants die, animals die, and also animals, of course, produce waste products. They wee and they poo. So you've got all this dead stuff, which is then fed upon by decomposers, okay, by detritus feeders such as earthworms and other creatures that eat dead stuff, and then bacteria and bacteria and fungi, which are our decomposers. So through the process of decay, of feeding on the waste products, these decomposers and these detritus feeders using the dead stuff as their food, and then releasing the energy from food, we then have, through the process of respiration, we have the carbon dioxide going back into the atmosphere. So just to stress that there's decomposition, there is decay of the dead organisms, the plants, the animals, and also the waste from the animals. And the animals and the microbes which are feeding off this dead stuff will respire and will then release CO2 into the atmosphere. So the respiration is the release of the energy from those carbon compounds that are in the dead organisms and the waste products. Now the last little bit is about our fossil fuels. When plants and animals die very, very slowly over millions of years, there's the creation of fossil fuels. And then when we burn fossil fuels, again the carbon dioxide is produced. Carbon dioxide is produced from burning fossil fuels, and that goes back into the atmosphere again. Okay, next little vid then, next part of it, we've included all these together, is about leaf structure. So, what I'm going to tell you about leaf structure, well, where do we start? Well, we've got the cuticle here, which is on the outside of the leaf. It's waterproof, and it helps to protect the plant. And then underneath that we've got the upper epidermis, and at the bottom we've got the lower epidermis. Now the epidermis helps to protect the plant to some degree, but also it allows the light to penetrate through to get to these palisade mesophyll cells, which are the site of photosynthesis. So these are crammed full of chloroplasts because that's where a lot of the photosynthesis is taking place. Photosynthesis requires carbon dioxide from the air, from the atmosphere, and the CO2 enters the plant through these little stomata, or the singular, the stoma. And either side of the stoma you've got the guard cells there that can open and close, or that can change shape to open and close the stomata. And then inside here we've got what we call the spongy mesophyll, where the CO2 will then enter, and you can have this exchange of gases where the carbon dioxide enters the leaf there, and we can have the oxygen, which is produced as part of photosynthesis, leaving the palisade cells, entering the spongy layer to get this exchange taking place. You've got these air pockets to enable the exchange. And then when there's more photosynthesis going on than respiration, then there'll be more oxygen in here than there is outside, and the oxygen will diffuse out, going that way, of course. Oh, that's pretty much it. What else? Xylem and phloem. Okay, so of course these are the transport vessels. The xylem transports mostly water, only upwards, coming up from the roots, up the stem, up to the leaves, and the phloem transports water, but also salts, sugars, and the sugars that are produced as part of photosynthesis inside these palisade cells can then get carried in the phloem to other parts of the plant, such as down to the roots for storage. Last one, let's have a last slide, which is on breathing. So, first let's think about inhalation when we breathe in. So when we breathe in, the intercostal muscles, which move our ribs, cause our ribs to move upwards and outwards. And our diaphragm, which is a sheet of muscle here, it contracts and moves downwards, it flattens. So this makes the space inside the chest area greater. And that increase in space inside here causes the air to rush in to fill that space. And then when we breathe out, so let's have a look at exhalation, it's the opposite way around. The ribs are moving downwards, they're moving inwards, the diaphragm is relaxing and moving up, and that causes the space inside the chest there to get smaller, which forces the air, there's then a higher pressure inside than outside, and forces the air out. I used the word pressure there. Let me just go briefly back to breathing in, just to reinforce that point in terms of pressure. I said before that when the ribs move up and out and the diaphragm moves down, space inside gets bigger and air will rush in. Now, just to make the point that the air will rush in because the air pressure on the outside is then greater than the air pressure on the inside, so air rushes in. So that's inhalation. That'll do, I reckon. I'll leave it there. Thank you.